Hello from Becky and me. Welcome to this evening's programme.
First tonight, the astonishing cover-up claims at one of our hospitals.
The former health director at Milton Keynes Hospital, Maggie Southcott-Want, claims NHS managers kept secret a string of incidents and blunders. They include a body tampered with in the mortuary and breast cancer patients misdiagnosed.
Maggie Southcott-Want is taking the hospital to a tribunal for unfair dismissal. But tonight, the hospital told us that some of the allegations are both wrong and distressing for patients.
Well, our correspondent Neil Bradford joins us live now from outside of the hospital. Neil, good evening. Tell us a bit more about some of these incredible claims.
Well, blunders, cover-ups, even police investigations. These are very worrying and startling allegations that paint a picture of a very chaotic hospital over the past few years. The person making the allegations, not a patient, not a member of staff, but a former director of the hospital. Now, they've come to light as part of evidence to be presented to an employment tribunal later in the year. Former director of nursing Maggie Southcott-Want was sacked back in 2007 for allegedly abusing her position by employing a friend. She's now claiming unfair dismissal. Now, she's already had her case upheld at a previous tribunal, but an appeal judge ruled the case must be reheard. And as part of her evidence to that case in Bedford, a string of embarrassing incidents she had to deal with as director of nursing will be presented as evidence. Now, they include allegations that mortuary staff tampered with bodies, taking pictures of a motorbike accident victim and posting them on the internet. She claims other bodies were left lying on the floor of the mortuary fridge. The former director of nursing also reveals details of a fraud investigation in the pathology department. She says there was a cover-up of the misdiagnosis of breast cancer patients, something the hospital say there was no cover-up and all patients were successfully contacted. And she claims that an obstetrics consultant was suspended because of serious care issues. All very serious allegations she claims were happening while she was director of nursing here.
So, Neil, how has the hospital responded tonight?
Well, the hospital have come out fighting. They've issued a very strong rebuttal. They say the allegations are unrelated, spread over a number of years. They say there is no common theme in any of these allegations. Some are both wrong and distressing to patients and their relatives. And they say in every case of an untoward incident involving the hospital, it was properly investigated. They maintain there were no cover-ups. They then go on into some detail refuting many of the allegations. But clearly this is a huge embarrassment for the hospital that's already had some very negative headlines over its failing maternity services, and last week saw the resignation of its chief executive. So clearly headlines this hospital could rather do without.
Neil, thank you. Train travellers in parts of our region are among the least satisfied in the country, according to an influential rail watchdog.
Yes, Passenger Focus says ministers must insist on a host of improvements to rail services in East Anglia to win back public confidence. The train operator National Express says it's making major investment in services. Here's Natalie Gray with more.
A blogger recently joked that Norfolk is cut off on 3 sides by the sea and on the 4th by rail. Unfair? Well, not according to the influential rail watchdog Passenger Focus. It says passengers here are among the least satisfied in the whole country.
Not surprised at all. We know that the service connecting Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex with London is a poor service. There are old trains, they're unreliable and the journey takes too long.
And this is the problem. The 115-mile journey from London to Norwich takes around 1 hour and 50 minutes. Birmingham is similar in distance, 118 miles, but can be reached from London in only 1 hour and 23 minutes. Meanwhile, trains can cover the 180 miles to York in only 9 minutes longer than it takes to get to Norwich. Passengers on the same line in Ipswich say it's just not good enough.
The most irritating thing is that even when you do get on and you get a seat, there's no running water in the toilets, and I mean the worst thing that happened to them was getting rid of the restaurant car. They got rid of the restaurant car and that was its saving grace really, but yeah, not great.
And coming back in the evening, I had to stand yesterday as well. You know, and you have to stand, you're paying that money, I just think it's a lot.
Some days it's very good like today, and there's other days when it's a complete nightmare.
The current National Express East Anglia rail service ends next year. Passenger Focus says the new company taking over needs to win back the faith of passengers.
We know there's plenty of interest in it because there are 4 or 5 train operating companies interested and queuing up to take part in the process. What's really important is that we make sure we get a better deal this time round for passengers.
A Norwich in 90 minutes campaign is gaining momentum and could lead to £1 billion boost for the region's economy. And for one of our MPs, it can't come a moment too soon.
It's a question of speed, it's sometimes a question of even cleanliness of the trains, it's sometimes a question of punctuality, it can be a question of capacity. You know, people obviously getting on from usually Ipswich and south often have to stand peak times, and that is a real problem. It's not the kind of service that we want.
For its part, National Express says punctuality levels have risen to 91%. It's working with the Norwich in 90 campaign and says passengers should see faster journey times later this year. Meanwhile, Network Rail is investing heavily in our region. £1 billion is going on the Norwich to Liverpool Street line. That works out at £1 million a mile. The Luton Bedford Thameslink into King's Cross is getting a £5 billion upgrade, doubling the number of trains and a new station at Bedford. On the Peterborough to King's Cross line, £300 million is being spent on a flyover at Hitchin to improve journey times. Meanwhile, the Milton Keynes to Euston line has just benefited from an £8 billion refurbishment, the biggest rail investment in Europe. People here say taking the train has been a pain for too long, and with the new government comes a new chance to put that right. Natalie Gray, Anglia News, Norwich.
Well, National Express East Anglia has been spelling out what it's been doing to improve the passengers' experience.
They tell us they're investing £185 million in a scheme to boost the number of trains in and out of London Liverpool Street.
In 2011, there'll be 120 new carriages on the Stansted Airport and Cambridge to London Liverpool Street service.
But is all of that enough? And what sort of train service do you think we should be getting? We'd like to know, so do drop us a line at the usual place.
Yep, it's Jonathan and Becky at ITV.com. That's Jonathan and Becky at ITV.com.
Well, next tonight, could fox hunting be poised to make a return? It's emerged that a vote on scrapping the hunting ban will go ahead in Parliament next year, despite opposition from many Lib Dem MPs.
Well, it's a move that could split the coalition government with ministers divided, but hunt supporters in our region believe a repeal of the controversial ban is now on the cards. Matthew Hudson has more.
The scent of victory was in the air today for the hounds at the kennels of the Grafton Hunt near Towcester in Northamptonshire. But with the possibility of the hunting ban being repealed, will we see a return to confrontation in the countryside?
I think repeal the Act would be fantastic, be good for the hunting, good for the hounds, good for the countryside, good for the fox.
The government's promised to allow a free vote on hunting, though it's likely to be delayed for at least a year.
We've got to be realistic. Hunting is not the top of everyone's agenda, but we do think this is an issue that has to be dealt with. It's become such a farce, it's such a ridiculous piece of legislation that during the course of this Parliament the right thing to do is to have that vote and get rid of a really ridiculous law.
For decades, animal rights campaigners have fought fox hunting, but it was only with the election of New Labour in 1997 that the threat of a hunting ban became imminent. That led to the first of several massive pro-hunt marches through London. But ultimately, Tony Blair paved the way for the Hunting Act in 2005. The last time a fox was legally hunted with hounds in Britain was in February 2005. Since then, hunts have continued, with hunters using loopholes in the law, such as using birds of prey. But the campaigners are set on a full repeal of the 2005 Act. Agriculture Minister and MP for South East Cambridgeshire, Jim Pace, has been given responsibility for hunting and shooting, the first time there's been a dedicated minister for country sports in decades. Anti-hunt campaigners say any repeal would be wrong.
About 60% of the House of Commons are opposed to repeal of the Hunting Act. About 30% are in favour of repeal. Roughly 10% are a mixture of those who would abstain.
The battle lines are being drawn up again for a year of impassioned debate and campaigning, but it looks as though the last say will once again be given to the MPs. Matthew Hudson, Anglia News, Westminster.
Well, we spoke to Matt a short while ago from Westminster, and I began by asking him if he thought we might see a repeat of the angry protests over hunting previously seen in the capital.
Well, it could well happen, Becky. This is one of those issues that people feel incredibly strongly about. I mean, the hunting ban is either something that's preventing a barbaric so-called sport from taking place, or it's a huge infringement of people's civil liberties. It just depends which camp you're in, and certainly groups like the Countryside Alliance and in groups like the League Against Cruel Sports will certainly take their followers out onto the streets if they think it will help them to get what they want. And you can bet that from our region, well, there'll be plenty of people who are in both camps.
Well, Matt, this is really going to test the coalition nationally, isn't it? It's going to be just one of those classic issues that will come up time and time again. But how do you think locally our MPs will actually vote?
Well, it's going to be fascinating. In 2005, it was pretty much on party lines. All of our Labour MPs in the region voted for the ban. They were joined by just one Conservative, David Ames from Southend. The rest of the Conservatives voted against it. But, of course, we've only got 2 Labour MPs left now, and it's going to be interesting to see what some of the new Conservatives make of it. I'm having seen some of them. Many of them seem like quite metropolitan types, perhaps not typical Shire Tories, if you like, and it could be that for some of them, fox hunting really isn't a big issue at all, not like it was for their predecessors. But if they're listening to their constituents,